Now we will shed some more light on the fermentation process. So as we discussed that the microorganisms are selected as desirable or undesirable microorganism, we look at the conditions in which these microorganisms grow, we look at the substrate, we look at the end product that are formed as secondary metabolites from these microorganisms, and that actually decide what is the end product or what is the process that has to be adopted in an industrial setting. So they could be different kind of end products. On the basis of end products, we can define that there are three different types of fermentation which are industrially very much relevant and very important. Number one is alcoholic fermentation, where the alcohol is the end product. And as you see, this alcohol industry globally is a very large industry. There are a variety of alcoholic products which are made commercially. So every product would have different kind of raw materials and different kind of starter cultures. Mostly they would be utilizing some of the yeast to produce desirable end product. The second product that is commercially made through industrial setting by fermentation technology is the acetic acid fermentation. So during this acetic acid fermentation, the end product would be producing acetic acid, as you can see in the case of vinegar. And the third one is lactic acid fermentation, where the final product is lactic acid. So this fermentation process can be seen in milk, making yogurt, as well as in vegetables as well. So if you look at the general process of all these fermentation processes or all these different kind of products, the general flow chart of this processing involves the substrate. The substrate can be vegetable, it can be milk, it can be meat, or it would be any other source that has to be utilized for the production of the end products. Then we add starter culture to the substrate or the raw material, and this starter culture can be bacteria, it can be yeast, it can be mold, depending upon what is the fermentation process that has to be considered here. Then after adding the starter culture, we all focus on the optimum conditions such as time and temperature and maybe other factors as well for the growth of the microorganism to a desirable level of the final end product quality. And then we look at the end products. So these end products are then harvested from this fermentation process. They can be making of yogurt or vinegar or alcohol or acetic acid, as I said, depending upon what is the mode of fermentation and what is the end product of the bacteria or the other starter culture that are growing in this fermentation medium. In alcoholic fermentation, as I said, normally we would be using yeast, and this alcoholic process or alcoholic fermentation is not only used for alcoholic products, it is also used for the bakery products as well. So every baking unit or every kind of baking product would have whatever that, if it involved fermentation process, it would be using different yeast to produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. But in case of bakery products, we are more interested in production of alcohol, because when we bake the final product, the alcohol would evaporate and the carbon dioxide actually is something that would be leavening or increasing the volume of the end product. So we may be interested in alcohol as in case of alcohol industry, or we may be interested in only carbon dioxide as we see in the baking industry. Similarly, acetic acid fermentation is another mode of fermentation by different microorganisms, and the end product is acetic acid. These bacteria are Acetobacter. They would be feeding on all the sugary stuff or alcoholic food stuff. If we have any substrate, for example potatoes or grapes or any other sugary substrate, and if we add the starter culture such as yeast to produce alcohol, and if we stop that process at that time, we can get alcoholic products. And if we don't stop that process and change the condition, that alcohol can be converted into acetic acid or vinegar. So this is the process we see in natural vinegar products, because most of the vinegar that we get from industry or that is available in the market is synthetic one. That is not the fermented product. That only is made by adding acetic acid into water. But these natural vinegars, they do come from this fermentation process. So the last one is the lactic acid fermentation. As we discussed that the lactic acid fermentation, we would be utilizing some of the starter culture that feed on glucose and other similar 6-carbon molecules to produce certain compounds such as lactic acid, and that lactic acid would be bringing down the pH of the product. And in case of yogurt, when the milk, the pH of the milk is brought down to 4.5, this would curdle up, and the final product that we would get is yogurt. So this is all about the fermentation process and the type of fermentations that are observed in the industrial settings.